everybody, welcome back. So today I'm doing my weekly reading wrap-up for this week. All the books that I finished, what I'm planning to pick up next, and what I'm currently reading. Okay, so first is, of course, my cookies for this week. I got from the Six Sisters stuff, and this is their Sweets and Treats cookbook. And they're just, I don't think it really goes through what their names are, but they are these six sisters who get together and write cookbooks. And I usually like their stuff quite a bit. So I made white chocolate raspberry cheesecake cookies, and they're awesome. So the first book I finished this week was The Appelton Case by Diana Xarissa. And the only reason I picked it up is because I needed an author that had either the first or last name with an X, and this was the only one that I could find. I'm doing an alphabetical reading challenge by the author's name, either first or last. The second book I finished was 1984 by George Orwell. This was a classic dystopian kind of sci-fi type book. It was definitely interesting. It follows a guy who works for, I believe it's the Ministry of Thought, and his job is to correct newspaper articles so that they match whatever Big Brother wants them to believe. It's always fun to read a book, even though it was written so long ago, that it's still applicable to today and has a lot of things in it that make you wonder, wow, it's almost like he saw the future and he knew what was going to happen. Next one I finished was Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card. This is the second book in the Ender Saga. I believe it's a trilogy. So this was, the first one had to do with the first contact with aliens, and humanity screwed it up royally, and they found another group of aliens, and they're trying to do it right this time. Science fiction deals a lot with, time travel, I guess you could say, in a way, because if you travel at the speed of light, then you don't age, but everybody else does. So they have people that are a lot older than they seem to be, or they've been around a lot longer than they meant to be. We'll just say it takes place 3,000 years after Ender's Game, and Ender is still alive because he travels at light speed so often. Next one I finished was Into the Wild by John Krakauer. This is a true story about Chris McCandless. In 1992, he gave away all his money, sold everything he had, burned all his money, like literally lit it on fire and burned it, and then just took off into the wilds of Alaska. And he was found 4 months later, and he had apparently starved to death. Except there was some discrepancy because his remains were pretty decomposed, so it was hard to say. This was really sad, and I have to say, I really have a lot of compassion for the poor guy that did this. I don't look at it. I guess there's a debate whether this guy was just really mentally ill or what was up with him, and I think he probably did have some, but I think he was also trying to live a different life, and he just was ill-prepared for what he put himself into. Last book I finished was All These Worlds by Dennis Taylor. This is the third book in the Bob verse. These are really fun and kind of light to read. It's still Bob making lots of copies of himself and traveling the universe, and he's running into aliens. He's trying to save the last of humanity. You switch around a lot because there's a lot of Bobs, and you just kind of go through them and like what each of their projects are, and some of them are just exploring different places, some of them are getting to know like alien species, and overall all of them are trying to come to terms with being immortal and being the only ones that are immortal, and they have to watch all their friends and everyone die around them. Alright, and the last two books that I finished in the month of March were One Punch Man 5 and 6. The author, I guess, just goes by a pseudonym of One. The art is by Yusaki Murata. And these are just fun. They're mangas, they're short, they take just like 20 minutes to read. And this follows Saitama, who has made himself a superhero, and he's the strongest superhero that there is, even though he's kind of lower ranked because he didn't pass the written test, I guess. So they think he's this low-powered superhero, but he can basically kill anything with one punch. And these ones, they have some first contact with aliens. So those are all the books that I read this week. The books that I'm currently reading Before They Were Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. This is the second book in the first Law trilogy. This book is quite intense. I've heard Joe Abercrombie is like the king of or grimdark fantasy, and so I was reading and I got through, you know, like 150 pages. I'm like, I don't think anybody has died gruesomely yet. How can he be grimdark if nobody's died gruesomely? There was some torture, but you know, nobody died. And then obviously in the next 10 pages or so, I was there you go, lots of people just died gruesomely. And I do like that there's also a story behind it. It's not just, you know, hack 'em, slash 'em. And the story's actually quite good. The first book didn't have a whole lot of the plot, and this one has a lot more, so I'm enjoying that. Next book I'm reading is When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie Mclemore. And this is, I think it's considered YA, and it's kind of romancy, but not so much that it's annoying me, because it's kind of dark. It's about this girl who grows roses out of her arms, and they often reflect like how she's feeling, but everyone, like including her parents and stuff, think that something's wrong with her and that she's got demons in her, and they keep trying to exorcise her demons, and she's gotten to where she hates the roses so much that she cuts them off as soon as they grow out. And then there's the Bonner sisters, who everyone believes are witches, and they are trying to get her flowers, and they are blackmailing her in order for her to give them her roses. The next book I'm listening to is an audiobook. It is Shogun by James Clavell. This is a historical fiction Asian story. It's really long, but it is about trade with Japan, and there's kind of some Portugal had a lot of trade with Japan when this took place, and the other countries in Europe are trying to establish their own trade with Japan because they don't like how Portugal's doing things. And so and Japan, apparently, other than like their sphere of who they know, like Korea and China and everything, they haven't been told that these other places even exist, because Portugal has kept everyone else from going there. And so now that this ship from England has showed up in Japan, they're kind of wondering, like, well, who are you? Where do you come from? You don't speak Portuguese, you don't speak Japanese or Korean or any of these other places that we know about. And so Japan's starting to think, oh, well, maybe there's a bigger world out there than just Portugal and them. And then the last one is Elizabeth's Legacy by Victor Klaus. And this one I'm listening to with my kids. His kids' parents go missing, and he's trying to find them, and finds out that it's hard to say if they're wizards, but they're people who have discovered this hidden kingdoms where people can learn to do magic. And it's just okay. I can't say like I'm heavily invested in it one way or another. It's just okay. So the books I have to pick up next are The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell. This is a science fiction first contact with aliens. Know that there's a group of people that go out to meet these aliens. Something happens and only one comes back, and he won't speak. So I'll be looking into that and see what that's all about. Next book I'll be picking up is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. And this is a kind of a science fiction fantasy mix. And I know it has to do with casts, and the casts are divided by colors, and red is the lowest caste, and they are going to revolt. The next book I'll pick up with my kids is A World Without Heroes by Brandon Mull. This is a fantasy first book in the Beyonder series. I'm just hoping that it's really good, because Brandon Mull is one of the authors that we like to read together or listen to together. Really liked Fablehaven. I really liked the Candy Shop Wars. Wish there was more of the Candy Shop Wars. And hopefully this one's great as well. Okay, so those are all the books that I finished, what I'm currently reading, what I plan to pick up next. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. I put new videos out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Thank you.